I was folding napkins when I heard them through the baby monitor. My daughter's voice first, careful and low. "We can't invite her, Jack. It'll be too awkward." Then my son-in-law, flat and final. "Your mom will make everyone uncomfortable. This is for Grandma and Grandpa Thompson, not her." I stood at the kitchen counter, hands frozen mid-fold, staring at the small white speaker on the shelf. They thought I was outside watering the roses. They didn't know the monitor was still on from when I'd been checking on their baby during her nap 3 hours ago. I didn't move, didn't call out, just listened as my own daughter erased me from a celebration I'd spent 40 years earning the right to attend. The Thompson family golden anniversary. Richard's parents, Margaret and Harold, married 50 years this coming June. I'd been their daughter-in-law for 38 of those years before Richard decided a 29-year-old dental hygienist was a better retirement plan than the woman who'd raised his children and sat with his dying father through chemo. That was 3 years ago. The divorce was quick. The divide was clean. Except it wasn't, because now my daughter Sarah, who'd cried in my arms when her father moved out, was planning her grandparents' anniversary party, and I wasn't on the guest list. I turned off the monitor, set down the napkin, walked to the window and looked out at my small garden, the one I'd planted after the divorce when the big house with the pool became a cottage with a postage stamp yard. I'd made peace with a lot, the smaller space, the quiet evenings, the holidays spent with my sister instead of surrounded by grandchildren. But this I hadn't prepared for. That night, I didn't confront Sarah. I made dinner for myself, salmon and roasted vegetables, ate at the table with a book propped open, and went to bed early. But I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the times I'd driven Margaret to her doctor's appointments, when Harold's hip was too bad for him to sit in a car for long, the times I'd hosted Thanksgiving because their house was too small, the 40 Christmas Eves I'd wrapped their gifts and signed Richard's name because he always forgot. And now I was too uncomfortable, too awkward, too much a reminder that their son was a man who traded in his wife like an old car. By morning, I'd made a decision. I called the Riverside Inn, the boutique event space where Sarah had booked the anniversary party. I'd seen the confirmation email on her laptop when I was helping her find a recipe last week. The woman who answered was pleasant, professional. "Yes, we're booked for the Thompson party on June 14th. How can I help you?" "This is Eleanor Hayes," I said. "I'm calling about the courtyard space. Is it available that evening?" There was a pause. "The courtyard is adjacent to the main ballroom. It's available, but it's typically used for overflow or cocktail hour. I'd like to rent it," I said. "For a private celebration, same night." Another pause. "Ma'am, I should mention the courtyard shares a wall with the ballroom. There might be nosebleed." "That's perfect," I said, and I meant it. The rental cost more than I'd spent on myself in 6 months, but I had the money. Richard's guilt had been expensive. I paid the deposit over the phone, confirmed the date, and hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not spite. Just a quiet, clear certainty. I spent the next 2 weeks making calls. Not to everyone, just to the people who mattered. Linda, Margaret's oldest friend, who I'd driven to physical therapy twice a week for 6 months after her knee surgery. Tom and Patricia, the couple next door to the Thompsons who I'd helped move 3 times. Father Michael from Street Augustines, who I'd organized fundraisers with for a decade. My sister Claire, who laughed so hard when I told her the plan she had to sit down. And others. Quiet people, good people, the ones I'd helped over the years not because I had to, but because that's what you did when you loved someone's family. "Come celebrate with me," I said to each of them. "I'm throwing a party for myself. For 40 years of showing up, none of them asked why I wasn't at the official party. They all knew. The invitations went out on cream cardstock, simple and elegant. Eleanor Hayes requests the pleasure of your company for an evening of gratitude and friendship. June 14th, 7 o'clock. Riverside Inn, Courtyard Garden. I hand-delivered most of them, driving across town with a box of envelopes on my passenger seat, remembering all the times I'd driven these same streets for someone else's errands. Sarah called 2 weeks before the party. "Mom, I need you to watch Emma that Saturday. Jack and I have the anniversary thing, and our sitter canceled." I was standing in my garden, pruning roses. "I can't," I said. "I have plans." "Plans?" She sounded genuinely surprised, as if the concept of me having a social calendar was foreign. "Yes, plans." "Well, can you cancel? This is important." I snipped a dead bloom, watched it fall into the basket. "So are my plans." She didn't push, just made an irritated sound and hung up. I went back to my roses. The week of the party, I went to the salon for the first time in 8 months. Cut and color, makeup consultation. I bought a dress, too. Deep emerald silk that moved when I walked, with 3/4 sleeves and a neckline that was elegant without trying too hard. I bought new shoes, small heels, nothing dramatic, but enough to make me stand taller. At the jewelry counter, I almost bought pearls, then stopped. I'd worn pearls for 40 years, Margaret's pearls, passed down, worn to every family event because that's what Thompson women did. I bought a silver cuff instead. Modern, simple, mine. The morning of June 14th came clear and warm. I spent it quietly, reading on my patio, eating a light lunch, taking a long bath with lavender oil. At 5, I started getting ready. The dress fit perfectly. The makeup was subtle, but made me look awake, alive. I pinned my hair up loosely, letting a few silver strands frame my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself, not because I looked different, but because I looked present, like someone who took up space on purpose. I arrived at the Riverside Inn at 6:30. The courtyard was exactly as I'd imagined it. String lights overhead, round tables with white linens, flowers in mason jars, a small bar set up in the corner, and a jazz trio tuning their instruments near the fountain. The space was open air, surrounded by ivy-covered walls, with a large archway that looked directly into the adjacent ballroom where Sarah's party was being set up. I could see them through the glass doors. Sarah in a navy dress, directing caterers. Jack looking uncomfortable in a suit. Margaret and Harold standing near the entrance. Margaret's hand on Harold's arm, both of them looking older than I remembered. Richard was there too, with Amber, his new wife, who was laughing too loudly at something someone said. I turned away. This wasn't about them. Not tonight. My guests started arriving at 7. Linda first, in a bright yellow dress, carrying a bottle of wine. "Eleanor Hayes," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Look at you." Then Tom and Patricia, Father Michael, my sister Claire, who'd driven 3 hours to be there, my old book club, minus 2 members who'd sided with Richard in the divorce and made it clear they found my presence uncomfortable. That was fine. I didn't need them. By 7:30, the courtyard was full. 30 people, maybe 35. Not a crowd, but enough. Enough laughter, enough warmth, enough proof that I hadn't spent 40 years invisible. The jazz trio played something smooth and low. Waiters circulated with appetizers I'd carefully selected. Small plates of food I actually liked, not the heavy, rich things Margaret always insisted on. We ate, we drank, we talked. Linda told the story about the time I'd accidentally locked us both out of her car at the grocery store, and we'd sat on the curb eating ice cream until AAA arrived. Father Michael toasted to the woman who never missed a fish fry or a fundraiser, even when her own family couldn't be bothered to show up. That got a laugh, a knowing one. At 8 o'clock, I heard the music from the ballroom kick up. Big band, loud and brassy. Through the archway, I could see the official party in full swing. Sarah was dancing with Harold. Richard was talking to a group of his golf buddies. Amber was taking selfies near the cake. "Don't look at them," Claire said, touching my arm. "This is your night." But I wasn't looking with envy. I was just looking, observing the party I'd been erased from, the celebration of a marriage I'd supported for decades, happening 50 feet away without me. and I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a strange, distant curiosity, like watching a movie I'd already seen. Then I saw Margaret. She was standing near the ballroom doors, looking out into the courtyard. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked. Then she turned and said something to Harold. I turned back to my guests. More wine? I asked Linda. By 9, something had shifted. I noticed it slowly. People from the ballroom were wandering over, first just curious looks through the archway, then someone stepped out to smoke and paused, watching our party, then another, then Tom's brother, who'd been invited to the Thompson party, walked straight through the archway into the courtyard. Eleanor, he called out, I didn't know you were here. I'm here, I said simply. He hugged me, joined our group. 10 minutes later, Margaret's cousin from Ohio did the same. Then another couple, friends of Harold's from the Rotary Club, who I'd organized charity auctions with for 15 years. They didn't make a big announcement. Just quietly migrated from the formal, stilted party in the ballroom to the warm, easy gathering in the courtyard. By 9:30, my party had nearly doubled in size, and the ballroom was noticeably quieter. That's when Sarah appeared in the archway. She stood there, staring, her face a mix of confusion and something that might have been anger. She scanned the courtyard, saw me standing near the fountain with Claire and Linda, and walked over. Mom, she said, her voice tight. What is this? A party, I said calmly. I told you I had plans. You're having a party? Here? Tonight? Yes. Her face flushed. Do you have any idea how this looks? How embarrassing this is? I took a sip of my wine. For whom? For all of us. For Grandma and Grandpa. This is their night. And this is mine, I said. I'm not crashing their party, Sarah. I'm having my own. But why here? Why tonight? I looked at her, this woman I'd raised, who'd learned from me how to be kind and thoughtful and present for others, who was now standing in front of me, demanding I shrink back into invisibility. Because I'm tired of being excluded from my own life. She opened her mouth, closed it. You're being dramatic. No, I said quietly. I'm being honest. You didn't want me at your grandparents' party because I'd make people uncomfortable. Fine. So I threw my own party for the people who aren't uncomfortable with me, the people who remember that I exist. Mom, you can go back to your party, I said. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm just done pretending I don't deserve to celebrate too. She stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked back to the ballroom. I watched her go, feeling nothing but a deep, bone-tired relief. 20 minutes later, Margaret appeared. She walked slowly, Harold behind her, leaning on his cane. She stopped a few feet from where I stood, looked around at the courtyard, at the people laughing and eating and enjoying themselves, at the jazz trio playing What a Wonderful World. Eleanor, she said. Margaret, may we sit? I gestured to an empty table. We sat, the three of us, Margaret folding her hands in front of her like she was at a deposition. I didn't know, she said finally. About Sarah not inviting you. I didn't respond. I mean, I knew you weren't on the list, but I thought you'd chosen not to come. After everything with Richard. I didn't choose, I said. I was excluded. Harold cleared his throat. That's not right. Margaret looked down at her hands. I'm sorry. For what? For not asking. For assuming. For... She trailed off, then looked up at me. For 40 years, you were family. You drove me to appointments. You hosted holidays. You sat with us when Harold had his surgery. You were there for everything. I was, I said. And when Richard left, I didn't know what to do. He's my son. I couldn't cut him off. But I couldn't. She shook her head. I couldn't choose between you and him. So I just let it be. Let you fade out. You didn't let me fade, I said. You helped push me. She flinched. You're right. Harold reached across the table, put his weathered hand on mine. We're sorry. Both of us. You deserved better. I looked at them. These people I'd loved for 40 years, who'd sat at my table, eaten my food, accepted my help, and then let me disappear when it became inconvenient to remember I existed. And I felt something crack in my chest. Not anger, just sadness. "Thank you," I said, "for saying that." Margaret wiped her eyes. "Will you come back? To the party?" I shook my head. "No, I'm staying here." "But this is my party," I said gently. "I don't need to be at yours to know I matter. I know that now." They sat with me a few more minutes, then slowly stood. Harold squeezed my shoulder as he passed. Margaret lingered. "You look beautiful," she said quietly. "I'd forgotten how beautiful you are when you're happy." I watched them walk back to the ballroom, two elderly people who'd just realized they'd lost something they could never get back. Not me, but the version of me who'd bent herself into their shapes. By 10 o'clock, the ballroom party was winding down. My party was still going strong. The jazz trio played on. People danced. Claire pulled me onto the makeshift dance floor, and we swayed to something slow and sweet. Two sisters who'd survived everything by staying close. Sarah came back out just before 11. She didn't say anything, just stood at the edge of the courtyard, watching. I saw her wipe her eyes once. Then she walked over. "Mom," she said quietly, "can we talk?" I nodded, excused myself from the group, and walked with her to a quiet corner near the ivy wall. She didn't speak right away, just looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally. "For what?" "For not inviting you. For thinking you'd be a problem instead of a person." She looked up, eyes red. "Dad made it seem like it would be easier if you just weren't there. Like you'd be a reminder of the divorce and it would make everyone sad. And I went along with it. I didn't think about what it would feel like for you. It felt like being erased," I said. She nodded. "I know. I see that now." We stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, "I used to watch you, you know. When I was little, how you'd drop everything to help Grandma, or take care of someone's kids, or organize some event. I thought that's what mothers did. What women did, just took care of everyone else and never asked for anything." "That is what I did," I said. "But you shouldn't have had to. Not like that. Not to the point where you disappeared." I reached out, touched her face. "I let myself disappear. That's on me. But I'm here now." She hugged me then, tight and long, and I held her. My daughter, still learning, still figuring out how to be in the world without stepping on herself. I could give her grace. I'd been her age once. "When we pulled apart," she said, "your party is better than ours anyway." I laughed. "I know." The night ended around midnight. Guests trickled away, hugging me goodbye, thanking me for a beautiful evening. Linda kissed my cheek and whispered, "You're a goddamn legend." Father Michael blessed me, which was sweet if unnecessary. Claire stayed until the last person left, helping me gather gifts people had brought, despite me asking them not to. Small things, thoughtful things, tokens of affection. The staff started breaking down the courtyard. I stood near the fountain, looking up at the string lights, feeling the warm June air on my skin. I'd spent so much of my life in rooms where I was needed but not wanted, useful but not seen. And tonight, I'd thrown myself a party. Not to prove anything, not to hurt anyone, just to exist. Loudly, visibly, on my own terms. I heard footsteps. Turned. Richard stood at the archway, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since the divorce was finalized. He looked older, thinner, the kind of aging that comes from stress, not time. "Eleanor," he said. "Richard." He walked closer, stopped a few feet away. "That was quite a party." "It was. I didn't know you were here. Sarah didn't mention it. She didn't know either." He nodded slowly. "I heard what my mom said, about being sorry." I didn't respond. "I'm sorry too," he said. "For a lot of things." I looked at him. This man I'd loved for 40 years, who'd shared my bed and raised my children, and then decided I was interchangeable. "Okay," I said. "Just okay?" What do you want me to say, Richard? That I forgive you? That it's all fine now? No, he trailed off. I just want you to know I didn't mean for it to be like this. For you to be cut out of everything, but you didn't stop it either. He looked down. No, I didn't. We stood in the quiet. Then he said, "You look happy." "I am." "Good," he said, and he sounded like he meant it. "You deserve that." He left. I watched him go, back to the ballroom where Amber was probably waiting, back to his new life that didn't include me, and I felt nothing. Not relief, not anger, just the gentle acknowledgement that some chapters close and you don't get to rewrite the ending. Claire appeared at my side. "Ready to go?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." We walked to the parking lot together. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. My feet hurt in the good way, the way they hurt after dancing. My face hurt from smiling. "You know," Claire said as we reached my car, "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For showing up for yourself." I unlocked the car, paused. "I should have done it sooner." "Maybe," she said. "But you did it tonight. That's what matters." I drove home slowly, windows down, warm air streaming through. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat for a moment, looking at my small cottage with its postage stamp garden and single porch light. It wasn't the house I'd imagined growing old in. It wasn't the life I'd planned. But it was mine. Completely, undeniably mine. Inside, I kicked off my shoes, hung up the emerald dress, washed my face, I made chamomile tea, and sat on my back patio in my robe, looking up at the stars. The house was quiet, not lonely, just still. I thought about Sarah's apology, Margaret's admission, Harold's hand on mine. I thought about the 35 people who'd shown up for me, who'd chosen to celebrate a woman who'd spent most of her life in the background. I thought about the jazz trio and the string lights and the way it felt to dance with my sister under the June sky. And I thought about tomorrow, what I'd do with this newfound understanding that I didn't need permission to take up space, that I'd been waiting my whole life for someone to invite me to my own life, when I could have just walked in whenever I wanted. I won't lie. The next weeks weren't perfect. Sarah and I had more conversations, some harder than others. Margaret called a few times, tentative, trying to rebuild something that had been broken. I let her try, not because I owed her anything, but because I could. Because choosing grace doesn't mean erasing boundaries. It means holding both. Richard and I didn't speak again. That was fine. Some relationships don't survive their own endings, but I did keep showing up. For myself, I joined a watercolor class, said yes when Linda invited me to her daughter's wedding, started volunteering at the library on Tuesdays. Small things, the kind of life that doesn't look dramatic from the outside but feels revolutionary when you've spent 67 years asking permission to exist. And every year on June 14th, I throw myself a party. Different venue, different people sometimes, but always the same purpose. To remember that I'm here, that I matter, that showing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. If this story found you at the right time, I hope it reminds you of something simple. You don't need an invitation to your own life. You don't need permission to take up space. You just need to decide you're worth it. Because you are. You always have been.